Hello, everyone. Tell me, please, if you can see me and hear me well. Hello, everyone. Tell me, please, if you can see me. Yes, hello, hello. So please tell me if you can see me and hear me well. I am waiting for your answers. Great. Hello. All right, tell me, please, if you can see my screen. All right. So I'm really happy to see you all here today, and I hope that we will spend a cool time together, and you will learn some new information that you're waiting for. All right. So let us start. My name is Nadia Stupytska. I am a senior teacher, a methodologist, and a trainer of Green Country School Network. As well, I am a trainer on the platform TalkEn.Cloud. So I'm really happy to see you all here, and I hope that everything will be fine with the electricity and with the internet connection. So anytime if you can see any problems, if you can't hear me well, let me know, please. All right, so let us start with getting acquainted with each other. I really want to know who are you, the viewers? So please let me know in the chat. Tell me please your name, the city you are from. As well, tell me please, what is your position? Are you a school teacher in a public school, or are you a private tutor? You're also welcome to tell me what are your expectations from today's webinar. So please write me in the chat. Let's cooperate. So please, public school, cool. Also, let me know whether you are a teacher of a primary school, secondary school, or high school. All right, I can see Lutsk is here. Dnipro, Kharkiv, cool. Yeah, really nice. Tell me, please, what are your expectations from today's webinar? What are you expecting to hear? Primary, all the levels, I see. So it's really nice. So many people we have here today. All right, so let's move on. So I want to tell you that the webinar will be recorded and it will be available on YouTube page of the TalkEn.Cloud. Also, you are going to get an email with the summary of today's webinar. As well, in this email, you will have a test, after completing of which you will get your certificate. Yeah. All right. So let us move. Let's not hesitate and start our topic. All right. So we have different types of teachers here of different levels. All right. So let us start with a very simple question. So it is, what is cooperative learning? So as the authors of a lot of works dedicated to cooperative learning said, cooperation is by far the most pervasive and important type of interdependence. We do not have a choice, we have to cooperate. So tell me, please, do you agree with this quotation? And how do you personally understand cooperative learning? What is it? How can you identify it? So please write in the chat. Today we have the topic cooperative learning. That's why I do hope that you will cooperate and we will spend nice time together. So please, what is cooperative learning? Is it true that we cannot avoid cooperation? All right, students learn from each other while interacting in groups, pairs. Yes, good evening, yes. So please share your ideas. What is cooperative learning? It is when all the participants of the educational process are engaged for achieving greater results. Agree. It is based on group work, pool, interactive games for sure. What else? What other ideas do you have? Do you agree that we can't avoid cooperating? It's work in groups. All right, so all your ideas are very bright. Thank you for sharing. So let us speak in details about cooperative learning. So cooperative learning is really very popular teaching method nowadays, and it can be applied easily both online and offline. It requires a teamwork to achieve common aims. You were right. So the common aim and interaction with each other of all the participants of the learning process. Yes, exactly. So, yes, thank you for sharing. All right, so let's continue. What is special about cooperation? So here you can see two verbs, to cooperate and to collaborate. So is it the same? Are these verbs with the same meaning, or how are they different? Tell me please if you know the difference. Write please in the chat what means to cooperate, to collaborate. Cooperative learning is a kind of work in which students work in small groups to accomplish a common learning goal with the teacher. For sure, it's learning together through different ways. Okay, great. So what is the difference between two verbs, to cooperate and to collaborate? Yeah, I don't know for sure. These two verbs are quite the same, so it's difficult to find the difference. Yeah, they are different for sure. Okay, collaborate means to create something new together. Cooperate, to act together. All right, do these two terms have some hierarchy? What is bigger, what is smaller? Are they somehow connected with each other? like cooperation and collaboration? Collaborate seems to be bigger. Any other ideas? Please share. Cooperate first, then collaborate, I guess. Don't be shy, please share with us your ideas. Let's cooperate and maybe collaborate and create something new definitions. All right, let us move on. So, collaborate is the first. Okay, so now we have different opinions. So let's have a look at the meaning of two verbs according to the Cambridge Dictionary. So to cooperate means to work or act together for a particular purpose, or to be helpful by doing what someone asks you to do. So some of you, some people were very close with this word act, like work or act together, and having the same purpose. On the other hand, to collaborate means to work together or with someone for a special purpose. So seems to be the same, but let's have a look here. So in collaborative learning, it is the students who organize their work. So they decide the formats, they share their responsibilities, their duties within their own groups. And in cooperative, it is teacher structured. So teacher is the organizer and teacher nominates and assigns the roles of each participant. So, and for sure, cooperation, I would say, is the part of collaboration. So we need to cooperate in order to create something new. So collaboration and cooperation are very often used with very close meaning. So during the lessons, we probably have the mixture of cooperation and collaboration. Very important thing is that cooperation is the work for the particular purpose, but also individuals have their own purposes, their own aims within the task. And collaboration means we work on the same task together. Do you agree with this? So any ideas? Yes, you agree. Great. Maybe someone doesn't agree and has different opinion. You are also welcome to share. Good evening. All right. A couple of seconds waiting and we will move on. All right, so let's continue. Collaboration, shared goals, cooperation, own goals, for sure. Thank you for sharing. Let us continue. And we are going to speak about the important components of cooperative lessons. So before I share the ideas, tell me please, what do you think is necessary? What is important for a teacher, for a lesson to be cooperative? What makes the lesson, the learning cooperative? What should be comprised? What do we need to include to have cooperative learning? Go, for sure, great. Some of the teachers here are really proactive, so thank you for being active. All right, goal, common problem, plan. Anything else that is needed? Rules. What kind of rules you mean? The rules for activity or just in general in the group? Friendly and safety and safe atmosphere. Great. So what is really important here is positive interdependence. So what means interdependence? It means that the success of a group depends not on a particular person, but on everyone. So everyone has got his or her part of a task, his responsibility. And the result of the group depends on everyone. Yeah. So positive atmosphere here as well. Then face-to-face promotive interaction. So students need to cooperate, they need to discuss something with each other, they need to have an interaction, let's say not face-to-face, but if we are working online, screen to screen. So screen to screen interaction is what we have in our real life these days. So the next one, individual accountability. That means that the task is shared between everyone. Each student is active because they have different parts of the activity. They have different tasks within one activity for sure. And social skills, yes, someone guessed social skills. All right, can you please tell me what is included into social skills? What exactly it means? What is called social skills? team building, problem solving, great. Agreed. What else? Ability to communicate, yeah. So the communication should be effective. So communication, active listening, relationship respect, great. Relation management, ability to solve problems, empathy, yeah, active listening, cool. Yes, thank you a lot. Active listening, great, well done. And group processing. So you and your students need to be aware of the process of what is happening. They need to know their development. So you need to provide your students with the feedback after each activity, not only feedback on the work of the group as a unit, but also the work of each individual student. So let's once again say about 5 components of cooperative lesson. There must be positive interdependence. So students are not separate, they are not just independent, and they are not dependent, they are interdependent. So everyone depends on everyone. Then screen-to-screen interaction or face-to-face interaction if we are speaking about offline lesson. Individual accountability, so everyone knows what to do and everyone is responsible for his or her part. Social skills, so everyone cooperates, everyone interacts with each other. There is a trust. Everyone can share opinion without any fears. And group processing. So you evaluate, you monitor the progress of the students. Very cool. So we are continuing. There are, in fact, 3 types of cooperative learning. So what are they? The first one is formal. The next one is informal. And the last one is group-based. So look at these 3 types and please tell me what might be the criteria of these types of cooperative learning. So what is here measured? How can we differentiate between formal, informal, and group-based learning, cooperative learning? Let me know in the chat, please. Hello, hello. So look attentively. Tell what is the criteria. What do we measure to understand which of these types? I'm waiting for your comments, for your answers, because it's the only way I can understand that you are with me, that you are following. Please let me know if you can hear me and see me well, please. I can't see your response. Can't see your responding, so please. Cannot understand. Can you give some tips, please? Is it about product? The final product? Not exactly. All right, so yeah. Thank you. Now I know that you can hear me. All right, so let's listen to me and let's identify the differences. So formal cooperative learning is aimed at completing a specific task or project. So it's the type of group that is based on the project. So the group exists as long as the project is in the process. When the project is finished, when the task is finished, the group stops. So it doesn't exist anymore. So usually it can, like this kind of learning can take from a couple of hours to several weeks. So some specific project can unite people into a cooperation. The next one is informal. It's a short time co-work. So it means that the team, the cooperation learning group is formed for a short period of time, such as one activity. So it might take a couple of minutes and up to one class period. And the last one is group-based learning. So it's a long-term, usually at least one semester and maybe several years. And this kind of learning is stable because the group is stable. The members of the group have close relations. They know each other really well. They know each other's weaknesses and strengths. So that is the reason for division. All right, we are going to the next part, and we are going to speak how to implement the cooperative learning. So there are 3 stages to implement the cooperative learning. Yeah, the difference is in period of time the cooperation exists. Yes, you're right. So the stages to implement cooperative learning. There are 3 of them. The pre-phase, the implementation itself, and post-implementation. So pre-implementation phase. This stage comprises Identifying objectives. So you need to understand, you need to set the aims for this cooperation, for this activity, for this lesson. You need to decide the group size. You need to choose the best size for this or that activities. And you need to specify the role of each student in a group. The instructions should be prepared. They should be precise so that every participant, every member of a group knows what to do and how to do. Don't forget about checking students' understanding of your instructions. So prepare some questions for this. What can be the questions to check your students' understanding? You might ask if they need to write something or just to speak, whether they need to work together or separately, whether they need to take some notes or not. Who is a person who asks the question and who is the person who takes some notes, and so on. In this stage, you also need to identify the criteria. What should be present for you to understand that the activity is a success? What must be the result of your students and of each individual person in this group? And also you need to set some rules and you need to know what to expect from them, from the students. So can you give any synonym, like how else we can call this phase? I believe that you understand it's what we do before every lesson. So what is it? How can we call this phase? Preparation. All right. Planning. Not sure whether it is warming up because it's even before you have the lesson. Objectives, it's part of this, yes, part of this preparation. Motivation. All right, so pre-implementation phase, it's everything that goes before, yeah, before the lesson itself. So first you plan, then you realize this, then you provide this and apply in your lesson. All right, then implementation. It's the activity itself. So it's when your students are working and you are monitoring behavior of your students. When your students work in their groups or in their pairs, you need to monitor, you need to make sure that they are completing the very same activity that they are supposed to. Also, make sure that you provide help. It can be on the spot correction if you see that something is mispronounced. It can be just helping with instructions or just with particular words that the student might not know. And don't forget to praise your students here if you see they are struggling. Yeah. All right, so implementation, it's procedure, yeah, the process. And post-implementation, it's what we get after the activity. So after the activity is finished, you need to sum up. You need to give some feedback on students' work. It should be the feedback on content of the activity. You can ask some ideas that students had in their discussions, in their cooperation. You can ask what were the difficulties, what were new things that they've learned. Also, it should be the feedback on accuracy if it's needed, depending on the topic, depending on the type of lesson that you have, whether it is about vocabulary or grammar or functional language use. So here we evaluate the result. It's also evaluation of our preparation. We can analyze and reflect how well we prepared the activity, how well we thought about the instructions, if they were clear or not. This stage is also really important for you to understand whether this type of activity is all right for your group. Is it okay for your group, or some changes should be done? So these are the 3 stages of how to implement the cooperative learning. All right, we continue. And the next thing we are speaking about is strategies. Here you can see 7 strategies of cooperative learning, but in fact, you can think of some other strategies that might be used. The first one is focused lists. So what is meant here? It can be different types of lists. For example, you can suggest your students to come up with their ideas of the words, the associations that they have with the topic. So you present the topic. For example, the topic is cooperation, cooperative learning. Please, in the chat, write down the associations that you have with this topic. If you hear cooperative learning, what do you think first about? Teamwork, great. Now your associations might be wider than you had them before this meeting. Group work, interaction, teamwork, great. So you can have this type of activity with all types of groups, with all levels, with all ages. Yeah, so your students might share their ideas. You can have the follow-up activity from this one, and you can ask your students to share on a particular topic that you have. So they can have even discussion here, sharing opinions, I can see, yeah. Thank you. The next strategy is short papers. So it's about taking some notes or asking, like you ask your students to answer some questions. So your students first have their own answers, and then you divide your students into teams, into groups, and they are going to discuss those ideas. This type of activity is quite useful because it might be used for development of their active listening and comprehension. So they not only need to listen to each other, but they need to react, they need to share opinions, they need to agree to disagree. A good thing to do is, for example, when you first ask your students to write down their own ideas, then divide your students into the groups. They discuss those questions or those tasks, and then you ask them to share their ideas. I'm sure that your students will have more ideas after discussion than they had before. So it's very helpful and useful. The next type is sentence completion. So this strategy is also really effective, and it can be changed according to the needs of your students, according to their level, according to their age. So what is meant here? For example, your students might get a task to create a story, but with some limits. For example, some members of your group need to create the beginning. The next few students need to think of the middle part of the story, and some people will need to think of how to finish this story. Your students might also complete it in chain, like one by one. So the idea is that students take turns in making up their own sentences to create a story. So let's try this one. Let's create a story of a teacher who wants to develop. So my sentence is, there was a public school teacher who wanted to learn some new information. And this teacher joined the webinar. Please continue. How can we continue this story? So let's continue the story of a teacher. So the teacher did his best to improve his skills. Cool. Thank you. So the idea is that your students cooperate. They need to create one story. They need to be active listeners because they need to continue the story after the sentence of their partner. So the next one is collective quizzing. So how can be organized? It might be in the form when your students receive the task, and in this task activity, they have the keys so that they quiz their partners and their partners quiz them. So the student receives the task and the keys and asks the partner. While the partner is answering, the student can help, can provide support, can help with some grammar or vocabulary, can give a hint. So all these strategies require teachers monitoring for sure. The next one, jigsaw pieces. So this one is a task that might be very interesting and can become a real project. So the idea of jigsaw pieces is that the students of the same group, they have different parts of the task. They do not cooperate at first, but they need to complete the task first themselves and then to share with each other. So what can it be? The students might be asked to read the different parts of the text or the different texts and to work with this part. So they need to search for a particular information or they need just to remember the details and then to share with each other in order to complete a chart or in order to answer the questions. So they might retell each other some parts or just to tell about some specific details of their part. And the last one is interviewing classmates. So this one is probably one of the most popular. So it can be the interview of any type. The questions can be prepared by a teacher and can be pre-planned, or they can be on the spot. If it's, for example, the beginning of the term and your students don't know each other well, so they can have this kind of activity in order to get acquainted with each other. So this is also a team building activity. You can ask your students to remember the information about the partners, to find similarities and differences. So it depends on the teacher what kind of strategy to choose, or to choose all of them at once within the same lesson. They are all useful and might help you to improve cooperation in your groups. So let's continue. And now we are going to speak about some advantages of cooperative learning. So let's first of all think, what is a team and what is a group? What is the difference here, if there is any difference? Let us know in the chat. Is there any difference between group and team? Waiting for your response. And while I'm waiting for your answers, I will continue with some advantages of cooperative learning. So when you have the cooperative learning, that means working in groups of students, working within some teams, you have more interaction patterns. So if we are speaking about offline lesson, your students might have activities in pairs, in groups of 3, in groups of 4, depending on the size of your group. Also, you might have the onion ring type of interaction. The moving lines are also possible with this type of learning. What is another advantage of cooperative learning is the variety of ideas and opinions. The more people are sharing, the more ideas we get as the result. It also teaches students to communicate, to accept other opinions. Cooperative learning increases critical thinking, students' motivation to learn. It's more interactive. The students are not just sitting and writing or answering questions that a teacher asks, but also they interact with their peers. They have probably some common interests. It promotes student self-esteem. So let's start on this about promotion of student self-esteem. The cooperative learning can be helpful. If you have a shy student in your group, it might be easier for this student to speak to another student, not to a teacher. So this student might share some ideas with the partner, or this shy student might listen to the partner's ideas and then to add something. And after this discussion, you can ask this shy student to answer. Then this person will be more confident and sure in him or herself. So social skills development is the next advantage. Soft skills for sure as well. The development of listening and speaking, and the variety of different activities. And now I can look at your answers about the difference between group and a team. Team is a term that describes people who have the same goal, who interact in order to reach it and help each other. Agree. Team is a cooperative group with certain aims directed to fulfill the task. Cool. Yeah, I think we start with a group but want to finish with the team. Yes, it would be very cool if you start from the point when your students are just a group of people and you finish with a team, because then they share the goals and interests. Thank you for sharing. A team shares a common goal. In a group, all coordinate their efforts. That's right. Thank you for sharing. And we move on. There are some tips how to group your students. Some helpful thoughts that I can share with you. First of all, you need to set clear objectives and methods of working together in a group. So your students need to be aware of what to do, how to work, how to organize their work. It will help you and your students. Then you need to be strict about what to expect from the students. If you are not strict, if your instructions are vague, the result will be vague. They will have different variants of how to do this task. The more precise your instructions are, the clear aim they have, and the better result you will achieve, and your groups as well. Then, every student in a team needs to know their role and responsibilities. Try to mix students of different abilities into one group, but pay attention that this point is controversial because it also depends on your particular group. Sometimes it's better to organize the groups when the students have the same abilities. It also can depend on the type of activity that you have. So the next one, the group size must be under 8 children. So let me know, what do you think is the best group size, which is the most effective, which is the most comfortable for you and for your students? What is the group size that you would prefer to have? Don't forget to check the process of completing the task by your students. So waiting for your answers about the perfect group size. 4, 5, 7, under 10, 5, 5, 5, maybe 6. All right, thank you. So the answers are quite the same, I would say. All right, so of course it depends on the type of an activity. If we are speaking about the group in general, the group that you work with, yeah, if it's online, it's under 10 for sure. Then you can monitor and assist everyone and help and be able to correct if it's necessary. Also, if you have the type of activity when there are 2 participants are needed, yeah, so like when we have student A and student B, the person who is asking questions and the person who is answering, also it depends on the type of activity. Then depend on the age. All right, let's speak about the age. So primary school, secondary school, high school, is there any difference in the number of students for the best cooperation? Let's discuss. when you have your lessons, do you have this difference, like if you work with young learners and with teenagers? It's more difficult with primary students. What exactly is difficult with primary students? To have the cooperative type of learning, or the division into groups? What is difficult? Young learners are difficult to set into team. So the earlier you start, the earlier you will have this team as a result. So yeah, it's for sure more difficult with young learners, but we need to teach them how to work in groups with other students. All right, let us continue. Thank you for sharing. I can still see that you are typing, but we need to continue. So we are going to speak about some practical tips. Let's have a look. So if you want to improve students' self-esteem, start cooperative learning by dividing your students into smaller groups or even pairs. It will be easier for them to share. They will be more confident. Then move to bigger groups and then ask students to present open class if it is needed. If you see that the student is not independent, the student is not ready to respond open class, just monitor the student work while cooperating with another student. Then you will have more chances to hear something from the student. Then try to change the groups from time to time to bring some variety. Of course, it doesn't mean that you need to change the groups after each activity, but from time to time it's necessary because it increases the variety. The students learn how to cooperate, how to work with different types of people. So it's like a model of society. So they can and need to know how to deal with different types of people, even if they have different opinion, different interests. The next stage is begin to apply cooperative learning starting from the first lessons. It is really essential point because the earlier you start, the better relations you'll have in your group, and the easier it will be for you to organize them. You will learn what are the strengths and the weaknesses of your students. You will know how to divide them for the other activities. So the more students cooperate with each other, the more they learn about each other, the more you learn about the students, and you can take this into account while preparing your lessons. The next thing is that your lessons must include icebreakers. So tell me please, what is an icebreaker, and is it the same or different thing as warm-up? So warm-up and icebreaker, do we need them during the whole semester, every lesson, or it's only needed at the beginning of the term of the lesson? Encourage your students to help each other. Also, your students need to have a positive attitude towards help from other students. So teach them. They need to understand that help from other people is a good thing. They don't need to be afraid of it. And we can't be the best in everything. We need to be helpful and we need to accept help. We're waiting for your answers about icebreakers and warm up. So while you are responding about icebreakers and warm up, I will continue with some examples of the tasks that you might use for your lessons. All the samples that are given in this presentation are used from the platform that is TalkEn.Cloud. So let's have a look at the first one. It is find someone who. So here you can see that we have several criteria. So what should be done here? You can divide this task into two parts. First of all, ask your students to make up the questions and write them down. Find someone who always brings food or drinks to lessons. So the students need to write down the question, not just to read this phrase. So first stage is to write down the questions. Then ask your students to answer those questions about themselves. When the students are ready, divide them into their groups or into pairs. But here it's probably about groups. Yeah, we need to find one out of many. So when the student responds positively, we write down the name of the student. The students might also ask each other some extra questions to ask about some details. This type of activity is especially helpful with teenagers because they really enjoy communicating. And they will be glad to know a little bit more about each other. So let me have a look at your comments on icebreaking. It's different for sure. Icebreaking is more about positive atmosphere, about opening person. What about warm up? Isn't it about positive atmosphere? What is it about? So let's move to another activity that you might use. This one is a crossword, but it's not a usual and ordinary crossword. So you might divide your students into student A and student B. Give your students the list of the words that they need to explain to each other, so that your students explain the word and the partners need to guess the word. Another type of an activity that can be helpful here to work with words is banana sentences. Ask your students to make up their own sentences with the word without nominating this word. The partners will need to guess what word is instead of the word banana or any other word. So you can improve this activity and change it into discussion. So for example, here, one of the students has the word unusual. How would you explain this word if you are student B? Or student B, sorry. How would you explain the word unusual? And also please write down how will you explain the word experience gift. While you are responding about the explanation of the words unusual and experience gift, I will have a look at your responding on the difference between warm-up and icebreaker. As far as I see, warming up is more about learning and repeating some new material. Warm-up is prepare for lesson, prepare to communicate in English. So about icebreakers is mostly about the beginning of the learning process when your students get acquainted with each other. So icebreakers are definitely needed at the beginning of the term. Then warm-up is probably needed during the whole term. It's just an activity that helps you to encourage your students to speak English. Thank you for sharing. Unusual meaning strange. Probably, yeah. One of the options. Not ordinary, unusual. Great. What about experience gift? Something different, extraordinary means unusual. Great, thank you. What about experience gift? What do you think it can mean? All right. So let's move on to another kind of a task. It's more about project-based task. So let me try to explain what is here. So the project type of work is for sure something that requires cooperation. So what is here? Here we have the task that is to create a vlog. So the students needed to create the vlog according to some criteria. They needed to use some structures, some sentences, some phrases according to the target material that they are studying. So what is here about other students? So while the student is presenting the vlog, or the group of students presenting a vlog, other students are listening to their partners and taking some notes, or they tick the phrases that were used. Or it can be any other kind of criteria, so that the students that are listening, they are not just passive listeners, but they also complete some activity. It can be creating of anything. You may ask your students to come up with an idea of a new type of sport, a new game that you might have during your lessons. They may try to create a new gadget and describe it. So a lot of different options are possible here. Or you might ask your students to create their schedule, their timetable for the week. They might complete their chart with their timetable. They might discuss with their partners and compare their week, who is busier. They might have some specific task. For example, they need to find some time to go to the cinema, as it is given here. So they create their timetable, then ask them to work in groups and ask to share. They need to ask each other some questions. They need to check when they have free time and to decide when to go. And one more activity that is helping to create cooperation. It is board game. There can be board games of different types. Here we can see that students have different tasks depending on the color of a square. So if they have the green color, for example, they need to explain a word. If they have pink color, they need to fill in the gaps in the sentence. If it is blue, then they need to unscramble the word. If they have purple, they need to find and correct the mistake. If it is yellow, they need to make a sentence with the word. Here it can be also about topics for discussion. So depending on the level and on the age of your students, you can create different board games. Or there are a lot of available online nowadays. So everything depends on your goals that you set. There is the game. All right. So let us sum up. I want to say that cooperative learning is really effective tool. And we really can't avoid cooperation because it is very effective. It is helpful for you and for your students. It gives you more chances to bring variety to your lessons. It helps to motivate your students. So if you are interested in many different activities for different levels, you're welcome to scan the code and to visit the TalkEn platform that comprises different worksheets, different course books for different levels of the students. So it is the platform that is a cool tool both for teachers and students. So everything is in one place. You can see the group that you have, all the participants of your group. So the list of your students is given. You can find all the materials. They are already prepared. The lesson plans are written. And all the activities can be transformed into cooperative type of learning. Everything can be changed. I gave you some examples of some activities from this website, from this platform. So once again, I want to tell you that the recording of this webinar will be available on the YouTube page of TalkEn.Cloud. You will receive a summary of today's webinar via email. In the email, you will also have a test after completing of which you will get your certificate. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. In the email, you will get the information that we talked about today in a brief form. Also, you will see some activities that were mentioned. The references are given for you to study this topic even more. So you're welcome to ask any questions if you have any. So today we discussed with you what is cooperative learning and if it is effective with your groups online and offline. We discussed the main components that should be present if you want to have a cooperative learning lesson. We discussed the three main types of cooperative learning, that is based on the time. There were some stages of implementation mentioned. We discussed the difference between a group and a team. All right, reading your answers. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks a lot. It was interesting and useful. Thank you a lot. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for sharing your ideas. You are very cool members of cooperative learning. So if there are no questions, then we can finish right now. Thank you for being here.